Okay, so are you ready to dive into something different this time?
Definitely.
Okay, great, because today we are looking at the listener-suggested Emerald Wonderland.
Oh, yeah. I was so excited when I saw this in my inbox.
Right, it's such a cool concept. So
Yeah.
for anyone who hasn't read it yet, basically it mashes up Oz and Wonderland, like all the characters and settings.
And it works so well.
Right? Like I never knew I needed a Cheshire Lion in my life until now, but it just works.
And it's not just a simple mashup either. The creator, Scully, really understands these worlds. He takes these classic characters and twists them in ways you'd never expect.
Yeah, like the Scarecrow Queen. I mean, talk about a villain origin story. You've got the Wicked Witch and the Queen of Hearts combined.
And it makes total sense. The Wicked Witch with her fear and the Queen of Hearts with her need for control.
Exactly. It's like they were always destined to become this ultimate antagonist.
And she's terrifying in a way that's both familiar and completely new.
Oh, for sure. And speaking of new, can we talk about this narrator for a second?
Oh, yeah. The narrator's something else.
It's like they're right there with you, commenting on all the craziness. It's very self-aware.
It reminded me of those old school narrators. You know, the ones who would kind of wink at the audience.
Totally. It's like Scully is in on the joke, which just makes it even funnier.
And it's not just funny either. The narrator adds this whole other layer of depth to the story. Like they're inviting you to think about the nature of storytelling itself.
It definitely makes you question what's real and what's not. And speaking of questioning reality, let's talk about the Labyrinth.
Oh, the Labyrinth is where things get really interesting.
A library where stories literally collide? I mean, come on, that's just genius.
It's like Scully took the idea of a library, which is already a place full of stories, and then just cranked it up to 11.
And visually, it's stunning. I love the image of books flying around with those little paper wings.
It's like he's giving physical form to the power of imagination.
And the way he uses the Labyrinth to explore the themes of narrative and storytelling. Just brilliant.
It makes you realize that stories have this incredible power to shape our understanding of the world.
For sure. And just when you think you've got a handle on this whimsical world, Scully throws in a curveball in episode 2, Steamburg.
Steamburg. Yeah, that was unexpected.
We go from talking lions and flying books to a steampunk city obsessed with logic and technology.
It's such a jarring shift, but it works.
It totally does. It's like he took these two completely different genres and smashed them together to see what would happen.
And what happened was pure magic.
It really was. It's such a cool contrast, though, right? Because you've got Dorothy and Alice, who are all about magic and imagination, and then you drop them into this world of gears and gadgets.
Exactly. And it's not just a visual contrast either. It speaks to this fundamental clash between logic and intuition. Like, how do these two different ways of seeing the world coexist?
Yeah. It's like that old saying, the heart wants what it wants, even if the head doesn't understand it.
And Scully really plays with that tension. You can see it in the way the Wizards of Steamburg react to Dorothy and Alice. They're fascinated, but also afraid.
Because magic represents everything they've tried to control and contain with their technology.
Exactly. They've built these incredible machines, but they can't explain or replicate the kind of magic that Dorothy and Alice wield.
Which makes you wonder if maybe there's some things that just can't be explained by logic alone.
Right. Maybe there's a power in embracing the unknown, the unpredictable.
And that's where the whole theme of rewriting your own story comes in. Because both Dorothy and Alice are facing situations that seem impossible.
But they don't give up. They keep fighting for the story they want, even if it means breaking the rules.
Like when Alice literally rewrites reality to escape the Scarecrow Queen, that was such a boss move.
It was. And it speaks to this idea that we're not stuck with the stories we've been told. We have the power to change our narratives.
And it's not just about escaping danger either. It's about challenging those limiting beliefs, those voices that tell us we can't do something or we're not good enough.
Exactly. Like with those corrupted fairy tale characters. They've been twisted and controlled, but once they break free, they get to reclaim their stories.
They get to decide who they want to be. And I love that because it's such a hopeful message.
It really is. It reminds us that we're not defined by our past mistakes or the labels people put on us.
We can always choose to write a new chapter. And I think that's something we could all use a little reminder of sometimes.
Definitely. Especially in a world that often feels very limiting and prescriptive.
Speaking of limitations, did you notice how Scully plays with the idea of different stories bleeding into each other?
Oh yeah, like those glimpses we get of other fairy tales. Those characters who seem familiar but not quite right.
Exactly. It's like he's hinting at this whole multiverse of stories all existing simultaneously.
And that's where the idea of collaboration comes in, because it's not just about one hero's journey anymore. It's about how different stories, different perspectives can intersect and create something new.
And Emerald Wonderland is a perfect example of that. You've got Dorothy and Alice, the mechanic hare, a steampunk city. It's this amazing tapestry of characters and settings all woven together.
And what's so cool is that Scully doesn't force these characters into neat little boxes. They all have their own motivations, their own quirks.
Yeah, like the mechanic hare. He's not just some wacky sidekick. He's got depth. He's got his own anxieties.
And even the wizards, who at first seem very rigid and by the book, you start to see the cracks in their facade.
They're not just villains. They're complex characters, trying to make sense of a world that's suddenly become a whole lot more complicated.
And that's what makes this story so compelling. It's not just about good versus evil or magic versus technology. It's about the power of empathy and understanding.
It really makes you think about the power of stories, right? Like how they can shape our beliefs and even our reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Scully clearly understands that. He doesn't just tell a good story. He makes you feel like you're a part of it.
Yeah, and he does it in such a creative way, like those recurring images of thorns. What did you make of those?
Oh, the thorns are fascinating. They're visually striking, of course, but they also seem to represent this idea of negativity. Like the more the Queen of Thorns indulges in her bitterness, the more her world literally becomes thorny and restrictive.
It's like a physical manifestation of her inner state, right?
Exactly. And I think it's a powerful metaphor for how holding on to anger and resentment can poison our own lives, how it can create barriers and prevent us from experiencing joy.
It's like those thorns are a warning, a reminder to choose love and forgiveness over bitterness and hate.
And it's interesting because even though the Queen seems to represent this destructive force of negativity, she's not entirely beyond redemption. There are these moments where you see a glimmer of her old self, the storyteller who just wants to share her love of words.
Yeah, like maybe she's not completely lost. Maybe there's still hope for her to break free from those thorns.
I think so. And it makes you wonder if maybe Scully is suggesting that everyone has the capacity for both good and evil, that even the most hardened hearts can find redemption.
It's a powerful message. But honestly, after reading these first 2 episodes, I have so many questions. Like, what's going to happen in Steenberg? Will Dorothy and Alice be able to bridge the gap between magic and technology?
Or will the wizards try to dissect that magic, to break it down into something they can understand and control?
And what about the Scarecrow Queen? What role will she play in all of this? Is she truly redeemed, or does she have her own agenda?
So many possibilities, and those glimpses we get of other stories bleeding through, it makes you wonder what other secrets this world holds.
Right, like what is the old country? And who is this siren godmother? I need answers, Scully.
Me too. But I have a feeling the wait will be worth it.
I think so too. Well, this has been quite the deep dive. We went from talking lions to steampunk cities to the very nature of storytelling itself.
Only in Emerald Wonderland, right?
Exactly. So to our listeners, if you haven't already, I highly recommend checking out Emerald Wonderland. You can find a link in the show notes. And as you journey through this incredible mashup of Oz and Wonderland, just remember one thing.
Don't be afraid to embrace the unknown. Sometimes the most incredible adventures begin when we step outside our comfort zones and allow ourselves to get a little lost. Who knows, you might even find your own Emerald Wonderland waiting on the other side.
Beautifully said. That's all the time we have for today, but we'll be back soon with another deep dive into the world of storytelling. Until then, happy reading.